Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. We're at GearFest 2014, and we are joined by Ed Cherney, producer, engineer. Thanks for coming in, my friend.
It's nice to be here, Mitch. Nice to see you.
Good to see you, too.
And I go way back.
A few years, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. You just finished your seminar.
I just finished. Was that a seminar? Is that what that was?
I would call that a seminar, yes.
Yes. I thought it was a program about me.
Well, it was a seminar about you. You were dispensing advice and information and really funny stories.
Yeah, and I hope they have a chart like how many times I said I, me, I.
Right.
Yeah, minimum of 10,000 times in an hour.
Well, this video is all about you, too.
Yeah.
So,
good.
So there you go. So,
okay, I'm in the right place.
You're on a roll with this stuff. Right. So you're originally from Chicago.
Yeah.
And how did you get started in the industry? I heard it was by driving truck.
It was definitely by driving a truck. I had, I had been a musician, not a very good one, and never thought of it being a career. It was, just, you love music, you play it.
Mm-hmm.
But I had some friends. I was home for the summer after my senior year of college, and some friends that had a band and were going out on a tour of the Midwest, and asked me if I would drive their truck. I knew how to drive a truck and haul gear. And that's what I started doing. And, a few weeks into it, the sound man didn't show up or something, and the band came and said, "Guess who's mixing the show tonight? You are, Ed." I said, "Okay." Had a couple of drinks, and I mixed the show.
And here you are today.
And here I am today.
3 Grammys and all kinds of awards and Emmy nominations and all kinds of things later.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. Well, they invited me into a studio, and I thought I was going to go to law school. Only that's was kind of expected of me, but the band invited me into a studio, and I'd never been in a studio. And I walked in the studio, and the light bulb went off, and I knew what my special purpose in life was. I mean, in a second, I knew that this is what I had to do.
Right. So you apprenticed at Paragon?
Paragon Studios, yep. 90s Huron. Marty Feldman owned it, and it was a true apprenticeship. It was a true apprenticeship. It was a very difficult job to get. It was an impossible job to get. It took me 3 years of once a month knocking on their door to get a job, and finally they broke down and hired me. And I started out at the bottom, cleaning bathrooms, cleaning toilets. Got a promotion. They gave me a brush, and you just learned how a studio worked from the very bottom, and you couldn't move to the next level until you showed proficiency in the level you were at. And that included cleaning the bathroom, cleaning headphones, getting a food order right.
Right, all that stuff. That's important. The details, right?
Yeah, and Marty Feldman was, I adored him. He could be a very difficult man. He expected a lot out of you, and sometimes he ruled through intimidation. But it was a great way to learn. It was definitely boot camp. Boot camp. It's funny. I remember he was talking about he thought he was going to be able to expand and put in a dormitory for his apprentice engineers that we could stay there and never go home. And at the time, I thought it was the greatest idea in the world.
Right.
Today, I don't think it's such a great idea.
Got to have that break every now and then, right?
But at the time, I didn't want to go home.
Yeah, right.
I lived in that studio. I don't think I went home for 3 years.
Wow.
I mean, literally, I did not want to leave the studio.
Wow. Then is that where you made the connection with Bruce Udine?
Yeah, I made the connection a few years earlier, like 3 or 4 years earlier than that with Udine. Udine, always entrepreneurial, but always an educator and always willing to share his knowledge. Had a class, and I read about it in REP. You may have worked for REP at one time.
Not REP,
Recording Engineer and Producer was the premier audio magazine at the time. And I just saw an ad of a recording course being offered at a studio in Chicago, and I think it might have been a couple $100, and a couple $100 is all I had, but I took this course, and I met Bruce there, and we became friends. I mean, I attached myself to him, really, and he got it that I was, a serious hombre, that I really wanted to do this, and I ended up, I'd carry his briefcase around, and he's been a recurring theme in my life.
Yeah,
and a dear friend for 35, 40 years.
Sure. When you moved out to L.A., wasn't one of the connections you made there with Bruce and Quincy?
Yeah, and that was accidental. I know Bruce had recently moved to L.A. to work with Quincy. And at the studio I got a job at Westlake as an assistant engineer. I was just assigned to them one day. And it was like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And I'm your assistant.
Nice.
And we connected, and I ended up working for them for 6 or 7 years or something like that.
But those were big years.
Those were big years. It was Michael Jackson's Off the Wall was the first album, and I was their assistant on it. And the dude, and it was literally dozens and dozens of records.
Right.
I'll tell you the great thing about it, too, is Quincy is, and I'm still friends with Quincy to this day, is one of those guys. Bruce is a teacher, and he would take the time to show me things, even during these sessions, and I was paying close attention.
Mm-hmm.
But one of my jobs was, Quincy was really inclusive in the studio. He was just always warm, and he was like a family. And one of my jobs is at the end of a day, I had to, document the studio and clean up, and then I would go up to Quincy's house and bring him a cassette. It was cassettes in those days. And I'd get there about 10 o'clock at night, and he was going to listen before our session the next morning. And my nickname was Big Julie.
Big Julie?
I won't tell you how I got it.
Oh, come on.
Well, the deli across the street from the studio was called Big Julie's, and when he wanted to eat, it was like, hey, Big Julie. But with Quincy, everybody has a nickname, and however you got it.
Right.
If you got a nickname, you knew you were cool with him, you knew you were in.
There you go.
And so I would go up to his house, knock on the door, and he'd answer at 10, 11 at night. And invariably every night he would invite me in, and we would just sit down and listen to music and talk about stuff and drink some wine. And I'd probably leave there at 4 in the morning. But for him to treat me like a human meant the world to me.
Right.
And I'll tell you something else that you learn from Quincy. What he would do, and it took me a while to learn this, because a lot of times our egos doing this get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
And, someone may suggest something, and you'll just, get out of here, I'm not gonna, who's that, I don't wanna. When Quincy would be done with a record, invariably he would invite down not only his accountant, but label executives, all kinds of people that were involved in his life, helping to sell records.
Mm-hmm.
And the record would be done, but he'd invite them all into the studio, and we would have a playback for everyone. And he would take feedback from everyone. Everyone had something to say. And me at that time, I would have gone, I don't, what, the accountant I don't want to hear from. But Quincy would sit and he would take it seriously. And at the end of that day, everyone that was there felt they had a stake in the record and they had some sort of input to it.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd go out and sell that thing and be involved. Like, this is my record, I'm a part of this,
right,
instead of making people feel separate. So he created this family to this day, and Quincy's got the same friends and family that he's had his entire life. The same people are around, and you learn that, to include people, to be inclusive, to be warm, to have empathy, to care about other people and what they think. And by enabling people like that, you get the best out of them, and it's just it's a better time for everyone.
Sure, and critical as a producer, if you're going to work with people and
Absolutely.
have them be able to perform as artists.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So he would bring the best out of everyone, whether it's the assistant, at the patch bay and running microphones and getting lunch, or whoever it was. He would enable you and make you feel part of something, that you had a stake in this.
Right. Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So since that time, Nick of Time, Bonnie Raitt, Rolling Stones, Buddy Guy, Fabulous Thunderbirds, Eric Clapton. Talk a little bit about how your career developed when you went out on your own as an engineer.
Well, it developed slowly, which is probably a good thing. A lot of times when you're an engineer or a producer, you get labeled with a particular time and place in music. Heavy metal hair bands. Mm-hmm. Well, there were people doing that. I'm talking engineers, producers. Where are they now? They're not around. Mm-hmm. So to have longevity in this career, you've got to be conversant in a lot of different types of music, and you have to be able to adapt and change to the way that you work, the technology that you use, the styles of music. Mm-hmm. And because I came up slowly and doing a lot of things, I worked on everything from, a 150-piece symphony to a one-man band playing a banjo and a kick drum.
Sure.
And by doing it slowly, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, and I never perhaps made as much money, as successful as, being on the bandwagon when a certain style of music is happening. Mm-hmm. But I've been able to keep working. Right now, I'm producing a record and soundtrack with Queen Latifah, who's playing Bessie Smith, music from the 20s. Right. And I know about that. I know how to do it. And at the same time, I was working with Wynton Marsalis on a record about a guy named Buddy Bolden, who allegedly invented jazz to turn of century New Orleans. Mm-hmm. So I could do that, and I could do this, and I can do music from the 60s, and I know how to do film scores, and I can work with an orchestra, and I can I can work with a polka band. So by doing all these things and coming up slowly, it's enabled me to have a career that's lasted. And that's all I ever wanted to do was to work and to be vital and still be part of the culture and part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm. So when you go in as an engineer or producer with a band, let's say the Rolling Stones, Eric Clapton, something like that, who is obviously a very established artist, they have their thing.
Right.
How do you approach that?
Well, with the Rolling Stones, when I was there, Don was producing other people, so I was there to record and mix them.
Okay.
But I've always approached being an engineer as from the headspace of a producer to serve the music and not just be worried about what microphone I'm using, but what the vibe is, what the arrangement is, what we're trying to do, who's upset, who do we have to please that day, what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always aware of those things, so I approach it that way. With the Rolling Stones, I ended up producing some things because I became their live broadcast. Whenever they'd go into a new market, I would get called to do a live broadcast to wherever it was in Spain or France or Germany or South America or wherever it was. So they started giving me production credit for doing those things because I'd record the band and then have to take them and do any fixes and mix it. And 99% of the time it was unsupervised. It was like, Ed, take care of it. So, with the Rolling Stones that way. With Clapton, it was one particular thing with Clapton I worked on that Russ Heidelman was producing. But I still approached it the same way. We did Tears in Heaven, and it was a soundtrack for this awful dark movie called Rush. Mm-hmm. Years ago, and then I ultimately got hired by Clapton to do the Crossroad Guitar Festival. So I would record them, do the broadcasts, and other people would work on them too and mix them. So that was unsupervised too. So you get production credit on that. But then I started getting, with the success that we had, Don and I had with Bonnie Raitt and Iggy Pop and some other things, I started to get calls to produce an engineer. And I figured the labels were thinking, well, we could save some money. We don't have to pay a producer because, this guy knows how to do it.
Right,
so,
right.
These days, I get a lot of calls to produce, but I'm not that anxious to do it. You have to be very careful now because there basically aren't any royalties for producers anymore, due to record sales. And if you look at streaming, what they pay, there's no royalties. And as a producer, you end up spending 3, 4, 5 months doing something. It's hard to make a living doing it unless you're also a writer or part of the writing teams the way we make hit records now. And I'm not that guy. I'm more of a coyote, a lone wolf.
Right.
So I'm very careful about it. But I have a room and I can produce if I want to. And if it's somebody I really like, really believe in, I'll do it. Mm-hmm. But a lot of my time is spent mixing because, they hand you the thing a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, I'm in and out. Everybody's happy. When you produce a record, invariably someone's unhappy at the end of the day. It could be a marketing guy, it could be someone in the band, it could be anyone, but at the end of the day, somebody is unhappy with you. And when you're mixing, usually everybody's really happy. They write you a check, thank you very much, and you're out the door.
Right, right. So that's your main focus.
Yeah,
these days.
Yeah, a lot. Although I'm working with Queen Latifah right now, and I'm producing this music she's playing for HBO movie. She's playing Bessie Smith, and I'm producing the movie.
That's great.
And engineering, so it could be the same thing.
Right.
They're looking to save a few bucks. They can consolidate the guy, but I can do both.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the way you came up was with the apprentice system, and then you worked with Bruce, and learned your craft behind incredible people. It's tough today because that system is largely gone.
Well,
how does somebody come up?
You can still do it the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And listen, it was impossible when I started. There weren't, there were some studios, but people weren't as aware of music production as they are now.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a part of our culture. Every college has a program. The gear is there. You buy a Mac, it's got GarageBand in it. Everybody uses a microphone and everyone's recording. So it's, you don't have to go through that and you don't have to starve, and you can go be a doctor, lawyer, Indian chief and still have a Pro Tools rig, and your keyboard, and everyone's a musician, and you can record yourself and enjoy it. Mm-hmm. So, but if you really want to do it, you still can. You can still move to Los Angeles and you can bug everyone. Look, like I said, I took 3 years to get my first job in a studio. Mm-hmm. If you're willing to do that, if you're that kind of idiot, you can come up through an apprentice system like that. You absolutely can. Although there's not as many opportunities where people are recording live like they were. Like you had a big, great space, microphones, an orchestra, or a band that had to, the way you had to do it was everyone's in the room recording at once. So that it still exists, but not as much. Now most everyone is, everything is programmed and you're using 2 faders on a console. And if you want to come up and to assist and to sit behind that, I don't know what knowledge you're getting. I mean, even Al Schmidt tells the story. The great Al Schmidt, 30 Grammys, been doing it since the turn of 2 centuries ago. But his uncle owned a studio. And he was a kid, and he was working in the studio, was cleaning up, helping to set up. And one day, I think Duke Ellington comes in to the studio, and his uncle forgot about it. There was no one there to do it. And Duke goes, "Oh, you're doing it." Well, because he had been assisting and sitting behind great engineers, he was taking notes. So he saw, this guy has that microphone, and he puts it there, and that guy puts that microphone. So because he was sitting behind some great engineers for a long time, he had documented how to do it. So he was able to pull it off. And that information that you get in the studio I think is priceless. But those aren't necessarily skills that most kids need today.
Yeah, the music is different.
Yeah. But there are opportunities. If you're that guy and you want to do it and you want to hit the big time and you want to work with creme de la creme, the big artists, and make hit records, listen, you have to sacrifice a lot. You always have had to do that. It's doable. You can do it. But you have to go to Nashville. You have to go to Los Angeles. You have to go to London. You have to go to places where the studios are and the music community is, where you can get in that situation and be exposed to people that are at the top of their game.
Right. So that hasn't changed.
That's
kind of the way it's always
been.
been.
And it's always been impossible to get a job, and that hasn't changed either. But if you really want to do it, look, it's not the guy that with the most talent that that gets ahead. It really isn't. If you got it's the one with the most perseverance, and you got to be wired a certain way, a certain type of personality that you get beaten down and you lift yourself up, because it's a difficult road. It always has been. There's no direct prescribed route to get there. You have to find your way, and you just have to hang in there, and you have to know what it's like to get beaten down and be disappointed and pick yourself up and still do it.
Right.
And that's the kind of person. It's still available. It's
Right,
still
it is.
absolutely available.
Yeah.
And I see kids doing it come through. My studio is at the Village in Los Angeles. My wife runs the record plant. We still see these kids, and they're always looking for kids that are eager to come in and start at the bottom and learn it. And I've seen them move up, and all of a sudden not all of a sudden, but with some work doing film scores and making records, and and having a career in it.
That's awesome.
But working at the top.
Right. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you are here on behalf of ATC Loudspeakers.
On behalf of ATC Loudspeakers.
What is it about ATCs that attracts you?
It's the first bookshelf that I've used that has it's a 3-way speaker. So always, and I'm always looking. I mean, guys like me, we're always looking through speakers. Speakers are our windows to the world. They're absolutely how you perceive everything. Our world is delivered to us, through speakers. I've always had a 2-way bookshelf speaker, and I have my own room. So you work in fewer rooms that have soffit-mounted speakers that are professionally tuned and set up that sound good. So most of us are using bookshelf speakers. I need a set of bookshelf speakers, first of all, that I can turn up loud if I want to. The band comes in and hears them. I want to be able to kick their butt, and
Right.
show off. Plus, one of the best parts of doing this is being in a room and mixing a song and being able to turn it up and having the music wash over you. And I need to turn it up too to see if it's harsh, to see some things, to feel the low end if it's right. I need to do that, and I need a bookshelf that I can turn up. I can turn them up. But the thing about having a 3-way is having one component. Placing vocals is always the issue for me. It's always hard to place the vocal. And that's something, placing a vocal in a song, it's got to be just right. If it's too loud, it's not a good record. If it's too soft, it's not a good record. And with a 2-way speaker, I was always wrestling with the vocal's too bright, the vocal's too dull, the vocal's too loud, the vocal's too soft, depending on which side of the crossover on a 2-way speaker, that particular vocalist is sitting. And in the song, between the chorus, it's up in the tweeter, down in the woofer. So with the ATCs, I like having the 3-way. I like having the one component that I can put the vocal on. I can just nail the vocal level. But they have that's a dome tweeter that they use. It's just very smooth, and I just like it. It's a very nice, sweet high end, and it's not harsh. And in the digital world we live in particular, harshness is our enemy. You know, I just at the end of the day, sometimes I'm so trashed because the combination of low resolution digital and a bad tweeter, you just go home trashed and you're not hearing so well anymore.
Mm-hmm.
My days last longer with those speakers. They're not as harsh, and I just like them, and they're really true.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, Mitch. It's always nice seeing you
Yeah,
here.
you
Now
too.
I know where you've been, you know.
Here, I've been hiding out.
You know, Mitch and I, we've probably known each other for at least 25 years.
It's like 40, 50 years?
Yeah.
No, not that long.
Well, we were kids. Anyway, it's nice to see you here
Great
at
advice.
Sweetwater.
Yeah, I'm here at Sweetwater.
At
Great, isn't it?
GearFest. And I would advise anyone watching this to, that nobody leaves the studio dancing to the gear. But that being said, all of us that do this love gear.
Yes, absolutely.
Love gear.
Yep.
So I'm going to go look at some gear, and I have no intention of buying anything,
But there's great deals out there.
but there's great deals out there, so I'm going to have to at least go see
Take
what's
something.
there. Yeah.
Take something home.
Yeah. Something that's going to make the music better.
Exactly.
I'll bet I'll find something.
Thanks, Ed.
It's great to see you. Mitch.
Great pleasure.
Nice being here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, at
Fort Wayne,
nice
Indiana.
Sweetwater.
Here we are. I'm Mitch Gallagher. Thanks for joining me for the Sweetwater Minute.